And you're not stopping, right? I think what I'm hearing is your momentum is growing. You've been told to change. You've left your church. You're told to stop, right? And I think too is we're told this is what people tell us is supposed to happen, right? If we tell you enough to stop, are you going to stop? And you're like, actually, no. It's actually going to make me determined to do even more. And I think that's the power of organizing. That's the power of pushing against white supremacist patriarchy. Is that it means that we have the power in organizing. Y'all are here because you organized and you got here to Kansas City in the middle of the country. And all of you are organizers, and now you're all organizing with one another. So that's the beauty of this, is that I met each one of these folks separately, and everyone is kind of touched each other in different type of organizing spaces. And one of the things I think Toy named too is that when we have these conversations about doing racial justice work, in particular, is that the conversation always goes, well, where's the pastor at, right? Or where's the rabbi at, right? And so when we look at particularly the queer community, half of LGBTQ folk don't identify as religious. Half. Or non-denominational. Half, right? So what does it mean to include secular people in these interfaith conversations? So that's kind of like one of the charges I ask you all when you go back to your communities to do this, because I feel like this is something that we feel, and Toy named it, is that we don't say we don't want faith leaders. There's very much there, but there also needs to be a conversation of how do we include everybody else when a lot of queer folk, and particularly a lot of young folk, don't identify as religious, because we are then not having this true intergenerational conversation that we should be having. So with that, I kind of want to close on y'all have some closing thoughts, but thinking about intergenerational organizing, particularly here in Kansas City, what does that mean to you in the context of creating Black joy? Because we're talking about our oppression, we got all this shit on us. But what does it mean to create Black joy in intergenerational organizing?
The company that I've created, the community that I've created, the company is called Food Arts Culture, and one thing that we do, we celebrate, our uniqueness, because coming from a government position and working in the courts, it was so daunting. It takes a toll on you doing this type of work. It really does. Yeah. And a lot of times we don't focus on our mental health. Our self-care kind of diminishes. So one thing that I focused on was celebrating our uniqueness, whether it's the LGBTQIA community, Black boy joy, whatever it is. We need to truly celebrate who we are. And so one thing that I've noticed that I admire in folks that are a lot younger than I am is that they have a voice. Like I said, when we were younger, you were to do as you were told. You don't speak back. You do not have a voice. You sit in a separate room, away from the adults. And so now the youth are much more vocal. They're expressing what they will and will not tolerate. However, in every civil rights movement, there was always that. It was always youth led. So I'm starting to see that, I guess I'm getting a little older, but I'm starting to see that now with the younger folks, and it's just so admirable to see them speak up for exactly what they want and what they will not stand for.
I'm probably the youngest up here. I'm 23.
You don't know that.
You might be younger than me. Black don't crack. But what I will say, that has been a really hard thing to do for me, bridge those intergenerational gaps, because the further, you don't have to go that far back to get to slavery. Because sharecropping was slavery, and that lasted into the 50s and 60s. So, yes, we're still enslaved. But, when I'm doing my work in my family, the women have all been assaulted. But no, I didn't know this my whole life. And you can go back and trace it, even on my dad's side. So for me, it's more of, I guess, accepting that they are who they are. They're founded on what they're founded on, but I don't have to be. I can take what's good and leave what's bad and create something new. And for the older people that are in the room, I feel sometimes older people also place, a stigma on kids or the younger generation if we do want to break from the norm. If we see that this is a problem, and it was a problem for you, it's causing you harm and we want to fix it, empower us. to do that, because it's more than just, it's not that we are, entitled or at least for me, egocentric. For me, it's about correcting the wrongs that were done before me so they don't have to keep happening. So that's been very hard, is getting, to be credible to older people, the elders. So I have to validate the elders first and say, I appreciate what you did before me, but this is how I'm gonna correct it,
I want to piggyback off of that comment. When I was going through the process of getting like this Missouri law change, and then we had that trial, it was like a 3-year trial that we were going through, one of my aunts, and again, like I never knew a woman in my life that was not sexually assaulted or violated in some way, not one woman. So when my aunt, she took me into the kitchen and she was as quiet as kept, she patted me on the back and was like, you did good, like you did the right thing. And so for it to come from her, this is a woman who told me that at some point, going through this 3-year process and yelling at people and trying to get people to come to trial and testify, and they wouldn't, it was this process. She called us weak, because we wouldn't just get over it, and live with it. It happened to them, so therefore they survived. You need to go ahead and suck it up. She pulled me in the kitchen and she gave me a pat on the back, and so just that recognition alone, it was then that I was validated. It never came from my mom, it never came from my sisters, but my aunt pulled me in the one that I would not have expected.
I learned a couple of things in my young age. Right, 23, a bunch of times. I've learned that activism, like what you do, and is a young people's sport. I kind of learned that. And so I learned to get in where I can fit in. And so I do a lot of social media activism. I call it righteous trolling. I'm a righteous troll. So I do a lot of that. But one of the things I've learned is to not only speak your truth, but live in your truth and walk in your truth. Yes. And if you are speaking and living and walking in your truth, others are going to look at you. They're going to start feeling safe and comfortable in speaking, living, and walking in your truth. And I just learned to, again, I only do what I'm capable of doing. Okay. So if someone else can do it better, amen, I'm going to help them to do better. Do that. Because one of the problems is, especially in the church, a lot of older people are not allowing the younger people to do, and so they leave. And so I think one of the things in Kansas City that I've been so frustrated with is that many in the Black LGBT community and even the allies don't speak up.
Yeah, they're scared.
And they're scared. And they have every right to be. And one of the saddest things for me was a few years ago I was speaking to a group of men, black gay men, and they were living with HIV and AIDS. And I said something like, we need to start speaking up and speaking out in churches where there's abuse going, especially spiritual abuse, where they'll take your offering, they'll take your tithes, they'll take your spiritual gifts, but they treat you like hell and crap. And one of the guys, it got really quiet, and one of the guys said, why? And that's why I knew something needs to be done. So if we keep speaking out, if we keep, and my last thing is, you can only move things that want to be moved. Okay? I used to do a lot of speaking out against the church, the black church, and yelling and screaming, and all it does is it gets you tired and hoarse. So you speak to those who want to move, who have the ability to move, at the movable middle, okay? We need to start speaking in places where we feel safe, and speaking in places that don't want us. Speak to places that will hear us, okay? Not always agree with us.
5 years ago, you remember when I first came into the clinic when you were working at Casey Care? Me and my anxiety, how I was hard to even interact with because of my anxiety. I had the nervous energy. I'm thinking like there was a time when I was homeless going to college. I feel like, who was listening to me back then? There was a time when I was really going through something and I didn't have this. I didn't have resources. People were not taking me seriously. And those are all the things that kind of led into my diagnosis. It's that power imbalance. That's a thing that allowed people to feel like they could take advantage of me. People look at me and all they see is an opportunity to have sex with somebody who can't really, who's not empowered enough to call them on their stuff or whatever. So so I guess more often now I'm starting to see myself as more of the ally in making sure that, I get involved when I can and when I see things that are not right. I asked the other day, how can I better identify these things that are going wrong around me? I'm on a college campus. We know this stuff happens everywhere. How can I better identify when something around me is going on? Because, a lot of these things are impacting young people. High HIV incidence, 18 to 24. We had the same conversation about sexual violence in my class about people with disabilities. I think the incidence is pretty high in that demographic also. So I'm just thinking about power imbalances and, empowering young people.
Thank y'all for sharing. I just want to sit on that for a moment. There's a lot of heavy stuff in this room.